Got it? Okay, great. So we're going to start off with just a quick bit of housekeeping. I know that we've all been on lots of these video meetings, so we're all familiar with how these work, but we wanted to just give a few notes if you're less familiar with Zoom. We are going to take questions at the end. So if you have questions as we go along, you can either write them down, or if you'd like, you can go ahead and put them in the chat, and you'll see at the bottom of your screen, some folks have it on the top or the side, there's a little chat bubble, and that's where you can put in any questions that you have, and we're going to track those, and we will respond to those as we get a little bit further along. I did want to acknowledge that if anybody needs Spanish interpretation, we do have Lydia with us here tonight. She put a note in the chat, so if that's something that is helpful for you, let us know, and we will make sure that we accommodate you. On the next slide, as we get to the question and answer, there's a raise hand feature. So you'll see down at the bottom, there's a reactions icon, and if you click on that, you can click on raise your hand, and then we'll know that you have a question or a comment, and we'll be able to call you that way. And finally, I just wanted to let you know that we have enabled subtitles for this presentation. So again, on that taskbar all the way to the right, there are 3 dots, and if you click on that, you'll be able to enable the subtitles if that's something that is useful and helpful for you. And we plan to, as you can see, we've recorded this meeting, and it will be available on the project website if you want to go back and review any of the materials. At the end, we'll make sure that everybody has the information about the project website and where to find all of this information. And finally, I just wanted to introduce the team for this project. So as I mentioned, I'm Sandra Marks with the county. We have other members of the county not with us tonight, but Corey Pitts and Joanna Conklin are on the BRT Bus Rapid Transit Planning team. And we have representatives of our consultant team from Kimley Horn and STV, who are available if there are specific questions. Jamie Henson, Aditya Ilamdar, John Krisafi, Nadia Kuchisheva, and Tara Hofferth. And I'm going to hand it over to Jamie to walk us through the presentation.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do tonight is provide a brief presentation that gives an overview of the Montgomery County BRT program, as well as an update on the schedule for New Hampshire Avenue BRT, the New Hampshire Avenue BRT study, and a brief overview of what we're finding through our analysis. We'll talk, it'll be a brief overview of BRT. It'll talk a little bit about the system plan, the study area for this specific study, provide a brief overview of the analysis results, and then talk through next steps. So we want to begin by talking through what is bus rapid transit, or what we'll refer to as BRT. So BRT refers to a few different things. It's a high quality bus service that prioritizes bus movement in a corridor by doing 3 things: by providing enhanced vehicles, by having enhanced stations, and by having enhanced operations. And I'm going to go through a few slides to talk through the specifics of what that means, and specifically talk about how that compares to more of the local bus type service that's on the corridor today. So an enhanced vehicle means a larger vehicle. So it's a 60-foot bus. It's the articulated bus, or as my children like to call it, the bendy bus. Where you're able to board through multiple doors. So you can walk through any door on the bus. You don't have to board and tap at the front. You can board from any door. There's spacious interiors. So unlike regular buses where they're 2x2 and you walk through, they're more spacious interiors. It's easier to get strollers on board, bikes on board, and wheelchairs on board. They're equipped with Wi-Fi, so you can do work or listen to your music more easily, and have USB ports on board for charging. So that's enhanced vehicles. In addition, there's enhanced station that provide things like weather protection. They're near level boarding to make it easy for those, not only for the wheelchairs and the strollers to be on board, but to get on board, where you can roll across easily into buses. The stations provide real-time arrival information, so it tells you when the next bus is going to show up, and it integrates pedestrian and cycling facilities into the station to make the transition between modes seamless, as seamless as possible. Now, these are features of buses and station that they're programmatic in nature, meaning that all of the flash routes have very similar station types and very similar bus types. What's a little bit different is when we begin to shift to operations. The operations of each of the flash lines, so the current flash line on Route 29 is the one in service, but the operations of the various lines may differ slightly. And our study is really going to focus on determining how best to enhance the operations of the corridor. So that's where we're going to spend most of our time with this effort. In order for the service to be as efficient as possible, we'll be looking to maximize our choice of bus-only lanes and bus priority through the corridor. And part of planning for each corridor is understanding where those dedicated lanes are possible. So that's a brief overview of what is BRT. So I want to shift next into a little bit of project background. And so with that, I want to start through a program overview. New Hampshire Avenue was a corridor identified in the countywide transit corridor functional master plan from 2013. And out of those corridors, as I mentioned earlier, the US 29 corridor was designated as the first corridor to advance, and it's now in operation. In addition to that, the Veers Mill Road corridor, as well as the Maryland 355 corridor, are in the preliminary engineering process and are advancing and are proposed for full construction funding in the FY23 adopted budget, so in the upcoming budget year. In addition, the North Bethesda route, which you can see in purple on the left, and the New Hampshire Avenue project, which you can see in blue or kind of an aqua color on the right, are now starting in the planning process. And the goals of the program are sixfold, and these are the goals for the entirety of the program. So whether it's Route 29 or Veers Mill or Maryland 355 or whatever effort, these are the county's goals that they've defined for their program. The first is mobility choices, so improving access to job, activity centers, and community facilities. The second is increasing sustainable solutions, so minimizing the environmental impact from transportation and utilizing cost-effective design for that. Improving corridor safety, so improving the safety of our streets and the livability and wellness of our communities. Economic growth, promoting economic development and appealing and functional transit. High quality of service, so a fast, reliable, efficient, and well-connected transit service. And improving community equity, so providing improved and accessible transit service for underserved populations. So moving next into schedule, the corridor study is one of the first steps in a multi-step process to implement BRT. And so you can see along that top line, the broad process. So you can see on the far left, the 2013 master plan I mentioned earlier. And then the next step is the study, which is where we are with New Hampshire Avenue. But you can also see that there are many other steps to come after this effort. Environmental evaluation, preliminary design, which I mentioned is Veers Mill, where Veers Mill and 355 are today, then final design, and then construction, and ultimately operations. And so the master plan recommended that BRT should be implemented in this corridor, in New Hampshire Avenue corridor, and the corridor study will confirm the recommendations and broadly determine how BRT should be implemented. So where it should go in the right of way, what level of priority it should have, where the stations should go, what types of stations, those sorts of questions. This effort will focus on defining broad characteristics of BRT in the corridor. It won't address, as I mentioned earlier, the environmental or the design issues. It's also not a safety study or a bike ped study, although we'll certainly look at improving safety as we move into design, and in particular as it relates to getting people to and from the stations. Funding's been identified for the planning study, but funding for future phases is not yet identified. Now moving into an overview of the New Hampshire Avenue study specifically. Our corridor is about 8.5 miles long. It extends from the District of Columbia boundary at Eastern Avenue to the Colesville Park and Ride lot near Randolph Road. It runs through portions of Prince George's County, City of Tacoma Park, White Oak, Colesville. This also crosses the new Purple Line and the US 29 Flash service. Near the Colesville termini, the service will intersect with the planned route on Randolph Road. And in the south, the county master plan showed New Hampshire Avenue service terminating at the district line. This is really an unlikely ending point, as it doesn't really facilitate transfers, nor is there really high ridership node at that specific point. So what you'll see is we've noted 3 different locations in the map on the right, and it's hard to see at this scale, but we've noted 3 different points, one at Tacoma Langley Transit Center, Ethan Allen, and then at Fort Totten. And those seem like potentially more likely logical endpoints. And so we're actually very eager to get feedback on this tonight as we go into the question and answer session. Okay. So what I want to do now is provide a brief overview of the conditions that we're finding. What we'll show next is a very brief overview of those conditions. Much more detailed work's been completed and can be seen on various boards that we can show and that will ultimately be on the website. So I wanted to give a very brief overview of those conditions now. First, this is a very diverse corridor. There's a diverse set of residents. There's a diverse set of employers, from FDA to very localized retailers. There are many languages spoken in the corridor. There are many nationalities and many racial groups. It's adjacent to multiple equity areas. And so equity areas meaning groups with a high proportion of non-native English speakers, people who are at or below the poverty line, or who are part of a minority population. And that's what we mean when we say equity areas. And these are groups that have largely been marginalized and underserved. And so it's important to make sure we note that, to make sure that we serve these populations and these groups well. Next. There's density in this corridor at the major intersections. So density of land use, so where there's taller buildings, where there's more intense land use, where there's more things to do, more shopping centers, focus at major intersections. Those land uses are often mixed, meaning that you've got commercial and residential in similar locations where they can interact. There's also development occurring north of the Beltway, specifically at Hillendale Gateway, at FDA, planned at FDA, in the White Oak area, as well as Viva White Oak. And there are multiple other public projects being advanced in the corridor, specifically the Purple Line and bicycle pedestrian facilities in the City of Tacoma Park. And safety is definitely a concern in the corridor. There are frequent and serious crashes, as difficult conditions for walking and cycling. Between 2015 and 2019, there were 8 fatal crashes in the study area, 6 of which include cyclists or pedestrians. In that time period, almost 800 injury crashes and more than 1,400 property damage only crashes, so additional to those 800. As the project advances into the design phase, we'll be looking at the areas where there are known challenges, and we'll work to address issues that the BRT project can accomplish, with a strong focus, as I mentioned earlier, on access to BRT stations and intersection safety in the vicinity of those stations. Travel times are slow in the corridor. There are high traffic volumes, in particular around the Beltway. There's a high level of congestion at major intersections, and travel is often slow for both vehicles and buses. And many portions of the day, the buses are well below 10 miles per hour, and even vehicle traffic averages out at barely above that at on average of about 15 miles per hour. There are many buses that are serving the corridor. There are many types of transit routes. There are transit routes that are linear, that literally go up and down the corridor, such as the K6, the K9, the C8 in the northern portion of the corridor, that are going through much of the corridor. There's also commuter and peak services such as the K9. And then there's circulation focused services that are coming on and off the corridor and connecting people to places like Tacoma Park and Silver Springs, such as the 16 and the 20. There are buses that arrive roughly every 3 to 4 minutes below south of Piney Branch, providing just a significant amount of service in that southern portion of the study area. And there are a lot of people taking the bus. We've estimated that about 9,500 people per day board the bus or have in the recent past boarded the bus on a typical day in the New Hampshire Avenue corridor across all of those services. So these are people that are boarding any number of those buses, whether it's the K6, the K9, the 16 or the 20 or the other buses that are on this corridor. There's high existing bus ridership. Those stops are often difficult to access. What you see on the right are the bubbles of where people are getting on, and you can see nodes around Hillendale. You can see nodes around University and south of University, Ethan Allen, and then as well as Fort Totten. So you can see some of those nodes pop out. You can also see the difficulty in where those bus stops are located and how to get to those bus stops. Some of those bus stops have shelters and amenities for bikes and have nice rocking chairs in the case of the city of Tacoma Park. Others less so, that are in very small medians between the service road and the main line next to fairly fast moving vehicles, sometimes with limited sidewalks. So that's a brief overview of the conditions. We don't pretend that that's everything. That's a brief overview of those conditions, and we can talk through more details as we move into the question and answer session. But I want to get to the next steps. So this is again our schedule, and what I want to do now is talk through. We're at the end of our evaluation of existing conditions, and we're looking for feedback from this meeting as well as other meetings from stakeholders to help us understand concerns that we may have missed in the corridor. We're going to take this next, so we'll take the analysis and the feedback and we'll put it together and try to get a clear picture of the concerns in the corridor. And from those concerns, we'll use that to develop concepts to implement BRT in the corridor. And so what that may mean are concepts that begin to look like, next slide, please, various lane configurations for buses. These are not what we're necessarily going to propose. We wanted to give an example of what we may propose in various sections. These are various types of treatments that the county's using in various sections and other BRT type services are using across the country. We'll consider where we might put buses in the right of way, whether on the far left, whether buses are in mixed traffic, or next to that to the immediate right in the curb lane and exclusive dedicated only bus lanes where only buses travel, potentially even in a median in a peak period orientation, or potentially lanes in each direction in the median. We'll also think through how the BRT service will be aligned at the intersections along with station access needs. In addition, we've got a website. We'd love to hear your comments tonight. We're eager to answer your questions, but we've also got a website. If you want to share comments with us later, there's a functionality specifically for a comment map where you can open up a map and add comments at specific locations that we can then take as a team and then learn from and attempt to be responsive to as we develop concepts and ultimately alternatives to test. And with that, that concludes the presentation portion of our discussion tonight. And Nadia, I'll defer to you to see if there are questions in the chat. And if not, we can open it up to other questions that folks may have.
Not at the moment. Oh, all right. Okay, well, one just came in. I will read it out loud now. When originally proposed, the New Hampshire BRT was advanced as a single reversible median system. Given the traffic study, this does not appear to be efficient. Traffic is both north and south at both rush times. We need to work towards a 2 median bus lane configuration, and it should be all the way to Fort Totten.
Yeah, so thanks for the feedback on Fort Totten. I think that's a consistent message that we've heard throughout. And I think part of the the effort of this study is to figure out where and to what extent we'll be able to have lanes dedicated and what extent we'll need dedicated lanes. And then we'll need to consider not only a flash service, but also how it interacts with other local bus services. So we'll want to think through how it interacts with those services as well. There's no decision at all that's been made on where, what type of treatments that will include. You know, we provided the earlier slide for an illustrative of what could be rather than what will be. And it's likely that we could use different treatments throughout the corridor, depending on what the needs are. I think we have a raising, yeah.
We do. We have a question from Walter. Walter, you may unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. This was very informative, and I have to say I live not far off of New Hampshire Avenue. In fact, I could hear it out my window here. So if I'm going anywhere, I'm going on New Hampshire Avenue. And I just want to say your presentation on the current conditions, I think you nailed it. I mean, I think you really got everything there. I too would concur about Fort Totten. That's one area that I will go. I'm fit and I walk a lot, and crossing New Hampshire Avenue is really scary. And I give that, you know, I'm fit. I see a lot of people walking with strollers, with grocery things. It's really scary, especially around Hillendale, where the Beltway is. So, I'm just envisioning, what the median would look like. I just, put that in as a question, like anytime you could avoid, I know sometimes you just got to cross the street, but I just wondered what it would be like with buses in the middle like that. So yeah, just some feedback on that.
Yeah, I think we absolutely are hearing, and just spending time out on the corridor, we know that there's that is challenging, especially in the areas that you noted. And so that's definitely something we're going to be looking at as we come up with alternatives, and with a really strong eye towards making sure whatever we're looking at helps to improve safety and access for bikes and pedestrians and other users. So thank you for that comment.
Another comment in the chat, agree to different treatments. North of White Oak to Coolsville should be some sort of curbside bus lane system.
Yeah, as we go further north on the corridor, there's obviously a lot less congestion, and it's far more free flowing than it is further to the south. So I think ultimately we'll definitely be looking at some alternatives that mix and match depending on the needs of the particular segments along the corridor. So yeah, thanks, Eileen. While folks are coming up with questions, it might be helpful to show, Tara, can you pull up the web page so that we can just show folks what information is available on the web page, and how they can stay in touch with us and get signed up for the mailing list. And I know that there was something else that popped up while we were doing that, but we can come back to that. Okay, so for those of you that have not yet visited the web page, we'll drop the link in the chat so that you can access that. But there's much of the information that we've shared here is available on the website. There's one additional in-person open house this Saturday, and the information about that is there. So if you have neighbors who might be interested and maybe haven't had a chance to learn about the project yet, we would definitely appreciate spreading the word about the meeting on Saturday at the CHI centers, which is on New Hampshire Avenue, just at Hillendale. The information is right there. So if you go back up to the top, we'll just kind of walk through what is on the webpage so that folks are know what's available to them. So we'll start off with a really high level project description. There's a link for the transit master plan if you wanted to learn more about kind of the origins of this particular study, of this particular project. Some of the maps that we showed you tonight are just down there in that carousel, and you can click on them if you want to spend a little bit more time looking at them in more detail. The next section, you can learn about some of the other BRT projects that are happening in the county. Those will take you to those other projects. And then if you go down to the section, so this blue button for the comment map, this is what Jamie was mentioning. If you have a particular area where you have a challenge or something that you want to make sure that we're aware of and take into consideration, this map allows you to click, and you can see that others have already put some comments in there. Each of these bus symbols or exclamation points is basically folks who have said, this is a difficult place to cross. I want to make sure there's access here. If there's something that you want to make sure that the project team is considering, there's a link to that right on that page, and you can go ahead and put that in there. You can also, upvote, say, yep, I agree with this person's comment. I don't need to, they've already said what I was going to say. And that's available as well. And this will be up for the duration of the project. So as we go through this, if you have additional thoughts, you're always welcome to come back here, and we'll be monitoring this so that we can keep track of the comments that folks are putting in. And then I just wanted to point out back on the project page, in addition to these public meetings that are obviously open to, hopefully we're getting the word out. We've done a series of bus stop chats where we've engaged over 300 riders and folks out on the corridor. Many of those were in Spanish, so we're trying to reach a broad constituency. But we have what's called a Corridor Advisory Committee, or CAC, and if you are interested to follow, first of all, those are open to the public. So if you want to, we do a much deeper dive on some of the issues as we go through the project. Those are always open to the public, and I know that we have some members of the CAC on this call tonight as well. And all of the meeting materials can also be found here. So if you were not able to attend a meeting, or you wanted to go back and kind of get caught up on some of the previous materials, that's also available on the webpage here. And at the very bottom, that green button, sign up for updates, if you want to get on our mailing list so that you're kept up to date of future meetings and other events, that's a good way for us to make sure that we're capturing your information. So I just wanted to run through that so that people are aware of what's on available on the webpage. And Nadia, I think there were a couple of things that popped in while I was talking.
Sure. Let's go ahead and return to the questions. How about senior citizens can go free between 9:30 to 3 Mondays to Fridays on Metrobus? Is it the same for Flash Bus?
Sorry, I'm on mute. So it's not the same as Flash. So Flash and Metro is run by, the Metro bus system is run by WMATA, and the Flash system is part of Ride-On, which is the county's bus system. So right now, all fares have been free since COVID, and we'll be going back to collecting fares in July or sometime after July, and it'll be a flat fee of $1 for any ride. So hopefully that'll still be accessible for as many folks. And the county has a number of programs for those that are have additional needs. So we're happy to connect you with the folks that Ride-On if there are other things that you want to follow up on. Nadia, do you want to hit the next one?
All right, moving on to the next question. What is the effort being given to attempting to get those who drive to consider taking a future Flash? Changing the driver-only mentality is important to making this a success. Thanks to all.
I would say yes, we absolutely agree with you. I think it's a challenge, and an opportunity for all of us. And we think that there's going to be, it's going to be through a combination of things. One is, there's going to need to be some real driver education and community education to make sure that people know what the service is that we're providing, that it is competitive. Hopefully, if we come up with the goal is to come up with an alternative that is competitive with driving in your car by yourself. But there's going to have to be a lot of different approaches and ways of getting the word out and changing behaviors. And that's challenging, but we hope that if we design an attractive service that gets people to and from where they're trying to get to, that it'll be an obvious choice. We all know that there are times when we have to drive. We know that. The goal is, and we also know that there's 15% of people that doesn't matter what you do, they're going to drive. So we're not worried about them. And we also know that at the other end, there's the transit captive folks who either don't own cars or are too young to drive, or aren't able to afford a vehicle. And we know that they're going to ride the bus no matter how inconvenient or challenging it is for them. It's that middle group that we can change behavior, and that's where we hope that we can collectively, on a multi-pronged approach, we're looking at it from a service and from an infrastructure. How can we make this high quality, improve travel time, all of the things that make people make the choices that they do. And then, there's going to be some community education that we hope that everyone on this call and others will be engaged in to help make true. So, I don't have an easy answer to that, but you're absolutely right that it's a group effort and we're going to have to hit it from multiple angles. I don't know if others have.
Yeah, I'll add on to that just a touch. I think the two things that research tends to show that encourages people to ride transit outside of what Sandra mentioned of providing information and encouraging people to, is really making it go faster. But even more than that is making it reliable so that when it's going to come, and it comes every time, and the trip time's the same. We regularly hear on these types of efforts and have heard in the New Hampshire corridor that you can wait 30, 45 minutes for the next bus. And then all of a sudden 3 K6s show up all at once. And it's what should have shown up over the previous 30 or 45 minutes. And so one of the goals of this effort is to not only speed the buses up, but really more importantly, to make them reliable so that when they're scheduled to come every 10 or 12 minutes or whatever the schedule is, that they actually arrive every 10 or 12 or 7.5 minutes, whatever the case may be, so that you can depend on it. That's where folks get really frustrated and change behavior. And so we think that if we get the right infrastructure in place and a good operations plan in place that provides frequent enough service, that people will indeed use it and they will indeed change their behavior because they can depend on it and can trust that it will get them where they need to go when they need to get there.
All right, another question coming in from the chat. What is the number of passengers currently using bus service in the corridor?
So that's it's not as easy a question to answer as it might appear at first blush, because there's so many bus services using that serve the corridor. And so the simple answer that we found is about 9,500 people pre-COVID were getting on the bus. So there are 9,500 distinct daily weekday users getting on the bus. And as Tara just shifted and showed, these are the broad locations where they're getting on. They're not all getting on the K6 though. So they're getting on the 16 and the 20 and the C8. I can't remember off the top of my head. If I'm remembering, I'm just shooting a touch from the hip. If I remember correct, there are 4,000 or 5,000 on the K6 and 800 or 900 on the K9 that were prior to COVID. And then the rest were divided up between those other services. Don't trust those specific numbers. The 9,500 is correct, but I can't recall on the specifics of the K6 versus 9.
And that's just on New Hampshire. There's obviously
just on New Hampshire.
Intersecting, traveling,
right.
Yeah.
Right. That are much more that cross the corridor. We didn't actually check that, but there would be thousands that are crossing on the F buses and I believe the other Cs and the routes that are the Flash on 29 and the other services along 29. Really a lot of bus riders.
All right, another comment. Keeping the bus schedules is almost impossible today. Not just the K6 and C8, but right on 20 and 10. The longer the route, the more problematic to keep the times accurate.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. That is absolutely the case. And so I think that that's where prioritizing the service is really key, and making sure it has the proper level of priority, because the hard part is when buses get behind, they stay behind. It's a negative feedback loop, because there are more people waiting and it takes longer to board in the light. And then you start getting buses skipping stops, and then it gets really, the service deteriorates really quick. So it's really important to get the infrastructure and the operations plan in place that keep the buses on schedule.
We have another hand raised. Walter, would you like to unmute?
Hi, yeah, and I hope you don't mind me speaking. I'm on an iPad, so typing in the chat. But just a comment on, that issue, yes, about the buses backing up and whatnot. I live close to Northampton and Southampton. It's kind of a horseshoe. And I've seen this multiple times. So that's really a one-lane road. And there'll be some kind of either a fire or some kind of other emergency situation where they have to close the road, and the buses just start piling up. And I always wonder, like, don't they talk to each other and like say the road's closed, stay on New Hampshire, don't come off of New Hampshire. So I just, that's kind of a general comment. I've seen it more than once. The other is, I just wonder, it's been almost 10 years since the master plan. We're in the construction phase. I know it's very difficult to predict these things, but if there is going to be an improvement in service such as this in the corridor, do you have any estimated time when that might realistically take place?
I can share. I mean, the short answer is, I don't hold me to any of this, but just looking at the overall kind of life cycle of getting from this planning effort, which will take us through kind of a little bit before this time next year. Then we go into environmental and preliminary design, which generally will take a couple of years, and then final design another year or two before we can get to construction. So excuse me, if we were fully funded and didn't have to take a gap, which we may be, we don't know yet, I would say that, we're at least 4 or 5 years out at the earliest.
All right, another comment from the chat. Any chance of studying a tie-in to Fort Totten Station and its 3 metro lines instead of terminating at the DC line? Seems like a misconnection otherwise.
That's the general consensus that we've been hearing. And so I think that's, I don't want to speak for Sandra and the county here, but I think that's probably, it seems to be the direction that folks are pushing for. Virtually everybody that's provided any level of comment at this point has said very similar messages.
Yeah, and I can share that we've already been in conversation, very early conversations with both WMATA and the district, DDOT, and they're both open to working with us to work towards that as a possibility. So I think that we are, moving in that direction, but we'll have some more clarity on that in the coming weeks and months.
Would we like to briefly return to the slide that shows the potential termini in addition to Fort Totten, although the preference is quite clear?
Right.
So, Jamie, do you want to make the distinction between what the study is and what the termini will hopefully be?
Yeah, and so from the 2013 master plan, the county delineated the edge of the county at the district as the terminus. while I can't speak for that study, I wasn't engaged in that. My guess is nobody really thought that it would end there, but that was part of the county, and so that was where it was left. And so generally, when that happens, you wait for the more detailed process, and that being the planning process, to think through where is the logical endpoint, whether it's at that line, which really doesn't make a ton of sense, or just prior to, or just beyond. What's coalescing in this point is that just beyond. We were trying to make efforts thinking through where it might make sense, right? There's a ton of transit at the Tacoma Langley Transit Center. It could make sense to bring people down and transfer there. There's a node at Ethan Allen Avenue. It could make sense there, but there's obviously a lot of folks trying to get down to Fort Totten to get on those 3 metro lines. And so, we're cognizant that that makes an awful lot of sense, and is where the current K6 and K9 are taking people today.
All right, next comment. Since Montgomery County DOT has several projects in the air now, do you have any feedback on the New Hampshire Piney Branch to Beltway study? Will this be released soon? And is the new Right on 27 actually happening soon?
So Eileen, I think you're referring to the safety audit, which is being done in conjunction with Montgomery County and Prince George's County. So on that slide, what you can see is that for folks that are not aware of this study, it's taking a look at the section between Piney Branch just beyond the Beltway to the north, where there are a higher number of crashes that on the corridor, and obviously that's something of a concern to both us, Prince George's County, and and we want to make sure that we are addressing that. So this study will be looking at making recommendations. We have had we've been coordinating closely with them. We want to make sure, obviously, that they're aware of the work that we're doing, and we are building in the work that they're doing. My understanding is that there is a draft that will be released in the coming weeks, but I'm not sure of the exact timing, but can certainly find out. Eileen, if you want to connect offline, I can find out that information. But there are some recommendations. Some of them are short-term, easily implementable. Some of them are longer term and will have to be coordinated with some of the recommendations that come out of this study. So definitely a priority for the county, and we'll let you know the timing of that one. Happy to find that out.
Thanks, Sandra. With that, we have no more active questions. If someone would like to speak, please raise your hand and I will keep monitoring the chat. So
just in terms of how tonight's going to work, for those of you that are interested in hanging around, we are going to repeat the presentation if you came late, or if you just love listening to Jamie talk about transit on the corridor. We're going to repeat the presentation again at 7 o'clock in case there are folks that have a different schedule. We wanted to give that opportunity, and you're welcome to either hang around until then. If you want to take a break and come back at 7 and then see if there are other questions. I know that a lot of people like to hear what other questions are out there and hear that conversation, which I think can be often more valuable than listening to us talk, is to hear from your neighbors and others in the corridor. But we will take probably a 15-minute break. We'll still be here. If folks want to talk with us offline, that's fine. We'll be hanging around, and we will be repeating the presentation at 7 p.m. And if there are other folks with questions, then we're happy to engage. We'll find out if people are going to come at 7 or if everybody came at 6. So again, we really appreciate you all coming out and engaging and providing feedback. Again, we hope that you will sign up on the website. I believe that Tara put it in the chat, the website. And the comment map, if anybody has questions, we are always available. My contact information is on the website. If I don't have the answer, we'll certainly connect you with the right folks who do. And we really hope that you'll stay engaged throughout this project. It's important for us to hear from the community as we move forward. So again, thank you, and we will stick around, but we'll also be back at 7. So thank you all.